These are the 3.5 Part 1 video notes. So we're going to talk about slope in this section and about perpendicular and parallel lines. So first off, when given a graph of a line, we can find the numerical slope of the line by counting. You can count, and it's by rise over run. There's also a formula that we can use that we'll talk about it just a little bit later. So how do we find a slope of a line when given a graph? So what type of slope is this red line? If it goes in this direction, this is called a negative slope. If it goes in this direction, the right, this is called a positive slope. To find the rise up and down, we're going to do that. So if I'm looking here, I can see there's no point. So we got to find where do the lines horizontally and vertically cross. So I can see it crosses right here. And then I just follow along. Where does it actually cross? I would say it crosses down here. And now we're going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is my rise because I went up. Now I'm going to run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But because I went left, I went negative. Anytime I go left, it's negative, and down, it's negative. So because I went up, it's a positive, but then I went left, it's negative. So if we're coming back over here, the rise was 5. The run, it's right or left, and that was negative 7. So when we do that, remember, slope is rise over run. So my rise was 5, my run was negative 7, so my slope is 5 over negative 7. You could put the negative on the top, that would be just fine too. Or you could have it just out in front, like that. So there's 3 different ways to write it. As long as there's a negative somewhere, it's all correct. All right, so if we're looking at slope, line A, we got to find the slope of it. So it says type. Type means positive or negative. So line A is right here. That's a positive slope. And now we're going to count. So we got to get from this point to this point. How many do I rise? How many do I run? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I went 5. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I rise 5, I run 10. Always reduce your slopes. In order to do that, it's 1/2. 5 goes in there once, 5 goes in there twice, 1/2. Line B is right here. So line B, this is called an undefined slope. An undefined slope. Okay, so that's actually what the slope is. So if we were to count, see how we start here and we go up here? I'm going to rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I rise 7, but I don't go left or right any. And because there's a 0 on the bottom, you can't divide by 0. So that's why the slope as a numerical number isn't really a numerical number. It is just undefined. For C is this guy. So this guy's negative slope. So I'm going to start at the lower part and I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to run to the left 1, so negative 1. So rise 3, run negative 1. We always simplify and that just becomes negative 3. Now we're going to do line D. That's this guy. He has a 0 slope. So now let's try it. How many do you rise? If I have to go from this point to this point, how many do I rise? I rise 0. How many do I run? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, 0 over 5 is actually just 0 again. All right, slope formula. Find the slope of a line when given 2 points on the line. Change in y over change in x. So basically the formula is y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. We're first going to label the points x1, y1, x2, y2, and then you're going to substitute the coordinates into the slope formula and simplify. So x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to write down the formula just so we can see it. So y2 is this guy. So 9, then the minus sign, then y1 is negative 5. I'm going to put in parentheses. Then I have x2. x2 is negative 4. Then a minus sign, and then I'm subtract 3. Well, minus a negative turns to plus a positive, and this becomes 14 on the top. Then I have negative 4 minus 3 is negative 7. Always simplify, and this simplifies to be 2. All right, next, excuse me, we have x1, y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to subtract y2 minus y1, so negative 7 minus 11. Then I'm going to do x2 minus x1, negative 3 minus negative 1. Notice every time I use I have a negative, I put it in parentheses. My numerator becomes negative 18. My denominator goes to plus positive, becomes negative 2. Well, negative over negative is positive, and I get 9. So now we're going to talk a little bit about parallel and perpendicular slopes. So parallel slopes, you can see right here, they're parallel lines. Well, the slopes of the parallel lines are always going to be the same. And you can see it on here. So going up and down is 2, and left, right is 6. Down 2, left 6. They're the same. Perpendicular lines are two lines that form 90-degree angles. That's perpendicular lines. And perpendicular slopes then have opposite reciprocal. Opposite reciprocal slopes. All right, so let's practice that. So if I have a parallel line, they are all the same slope. Okay, so first one, if my slope here is 3, then my parallel slope is 3. If my slope here is 3/5, then my parallel slope is 3/5. If my slope here is negative 1/8, my parallel slope is negative 1/8. It stays the same. Now for perpendicular, remember it's going to be the opposite sign and the reciprocal. Okay, so this one is 3. I can really write that as 3 over 1. So because it's now positive, I know it has to be negative because it has to be the opposite sign. Now reciprocal just means the denominator moves to the numerator and the numerator moves to the denominator. So this 1 is going to move up and this 3 is going to move down. This would be the reciprocal. So negative 1/3 is the perpendicular slope. Okay, let's try our next one. So we have 3/5. Right here it's positive, so once again, I know it's negative because do the opposite sign. And it was 3/5, so my denominator needs to move up, so the 5 goes on top, 3 needs to move down, the 3 goes on the bottom. So I get negative 5/3. Finally, I see that it's negative here, so that means that my perpendicular slope will be positive. If I have 1/8, my denominator moves to the numerator, my numerator moves to the denominator, and then I simplify. 8 over 1 is really just the number 8. So the perpendicular slope would be a positive 8. All right, so now we're going to find all the slopes of these lines, A, B, C, and D. So let's start finding slopes. Slope of line A. I see line A here, that's a positive slope, so I know it should be a positive number. I'm going to rise and run. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as my rise. 1, 2, 3, 4 as my run. So my rise was 5, my run was 4, my slope is 5/4. Then for B, B is right here. It's positive slopes. Make sure your numbers are positive. So I'm going to rise over run. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I rise 4, I run 1, 2, 3, 4. So rise 4, run 4, always simplify, and it simplifies to 1. My slope here would be 1. Next, we're going to find the slope of line C. So I see line C here. It is negative. So I'm going to rise and run again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rise 4, run 1, 2, 3, 4. But I went left, so it's negative 4. So rise 4, run negative 4. Simplify that, that becomes negative 1. So the slope of line C is negative 1. And now we got to find the slope of line D. Once again, I see that it's negative. We're going to rise and run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Rise 7. Run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Once again, I went left, so it's negative 7. So I rise 7. I run negative 7, which means my slope is negative 1. So it says, which lines are parallel? Parallel, remember, means they have the same slopes. So I can see line C and line D both have negative 1 as their slope. So we are going to say C and D. Which lines are perpendicular? Well, perpendicular mean they're opposites and reciprocals. Opposite reciprocals, okay? So I can see these two are opposite signs, but it gets a little tricky with 1. Let's think about this. If my slope is 1, that really means 1 over 1. Okay, if my slope is negative 1, that really means it's negative 1 all over 1. So if I'm looking at these two, are they opposite signed? Yes. If I did the reciprocal, would my numerator go to my top and my denominator? Sorry, would my denominator move to the top? Would my numerator move to the bottom? If you see, one moves to the top, one moves to the bottom. It's the same. So these two are perpendicular because they are opposite reciprocals. So line C, I'm sorry, I have the wrong letters up here. No, that was right. C and D was right. So line C is going to be perpendicular to line B. But then also, look, you got line D is also negative 1. So line D and B will also be perpendicular. Okay, are the following lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? So I see 2 points. We got to figure out what the slope is. So I have x1, y1, x2, y2. Now we'll use our slope formula, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, and we're going to take this guy minus that guy. So 4 minus 6. And we're going to take this guy minus that guy, 8 minus 1. So my numerator, 4 minus 6 is negative 2, 8 minus 1 is 7. So the slope of line A is 2 sevenths. Okay, now we got to do it over here. x1, y1, x2, y2. So y's, 12 minus 5, x's, 2 minus 0, I get 7 over 2. So if I'm looking here, I have negative 2 over 7 and positive 7 over 2. So they are opposite signs. My denominator went to my numerator went to my denominator, and you can see it right here. So these are going to be perpendicular. So my answer is perpendicular. All right, so now what is the slope-intercept form? Slope-intercept form for the equation of a line is y equals mx plus b. This is what we call slope-intercept form. M is the slope, and b is the y-intercept of the line. The y-intercept of the line is the point where the line crosses the y-axis. So if I'm looking at this equation right here, this is in slope-intercept form. So here's y equals my slope, the x, then the y-intercept is right here. So the slope is the number in front of the x value. So the slope of this line is 2/5. So the slope of a parallel line, because it says what's the slope of a parallel line, so it's the same. The slope would be 2/5 as well, because parallel lines have same slopes. Now it says what's the slope of a line that's perpendicular to this? This is in standard form. This is not in slope-intercept form. So we have to make it in slope-intercept form. In order to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is move my x over, because I need y on one side, x on the other. So I get 6y is equal to negative x plus 72. In order to get the y by itself, I have to get rid of the 6. And because it's 6y, that's multiplication. Do the opposite of multiplication and divide by every single piece you see. These cancel and you're left with 1y equals. There's really a hidden 1 in front of that x, so I get negative 1/6x. Then we have 72 divided by 6. And if you don't remember what 72 divided by 6, you take out your calculator and you type in 72 divided by 6. You get 12 plus 12. All right, so now I got to find the perpendicular slope to here. So if this slope is negative 1/6, that means the perpendicular slope, remember upside down t means perpendicular. So it was negative, now it's going to be positive. It was 1/6, so I'm going to take my denominator, move it up, so 6 is on top. Take my numerator, bring it down, and that's 1. So we get 6. That would be your perpendicular slope.